Hello, everybody, and welcome to the YouTube All Builders special Saturday afternoon show. We're having a little bit of a difficulty here, technical difficulty. And welcome to Andy. I'm here myself. All right, I'll kill that. All right, I killed it. All right, YouTube All Builders special live show. I'm sorry about that. I've got too many tabs open. I'm here myself again. I'm already confused. I don't need to make it worse. But go to YouTubeallbuilders.com. There you can find the tabs at the top of the page for both Tuesday presentations, the live show, and the e-magazine. When you click on the live show or the Tuesday presentations, drop down comes down and you'll see the schedule there. So you know what days the Tuesday presentations are, because they are twice a week, and who's going to host the show and what their guests are. Same thing for the Saturday live show with Big Bill and Barry. The schedule's there, and you can see the times. All our shows are at 9 o'clock Central Time, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. So you want to check your time zones so you don't miss the show. But hey, if you do miss the show, not a problem. We do record them, and they're recorded and archived on YouTube All Builders on YouTube. So you can go there and pick up the shows that you missed and be able to watch those. Thursday night shows are every week at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. The e-magazine's coming out here about the middle of the month. JD and his crew do a great job with that. They've got a great magazine going, and they do a lot of hard work on that. So be sure to check that out. When you click on their link at YouTubeallbuilders.com, there'll be a place where you can sign up for email notifications. So when it comes out, you'll be notified by email. The magazine is a PDF, so that way you can download it and be able to watch it, read it wherever you want, because they'll play on iPhones, tablets, laptops. So no matter where you're at or what country you're in, you'll have the e-mag with you. So if you're having to stand around and wait, you got something to read of interest. Well, like I said, today's show is a special show, and we have a very special guest here. This is our first time doing this, and I couldn't think of another good person to have. She is really good. We have Kathy Millatt as our guest today. Kathy is HO scale layout that depicts the New England branch that runs up the East Coast. And the name of her layout, I know I'm going to mess this up again, so just hit me in the back of the head, Kathy. The Mill Valley branch is the name of it. She designed this herself. It is an American railroad, which is what she's interested in. Her layout is a 12 by 12 feet. She designed the track work herself as a figure 8 folded back on itself, right?
Yep.
And she's modeling the 1940s and 1950s because she likes steam engines. Good girl. You got to have those steam engines in there. Kathy, how are you doing this evening?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Oh, doing pretty good, pretty good. The first question right out of the box is what everybody asks. How did you get started in the hobby?
Well, you can blame my dad for that. When I was young, we had Hornby 00, which I don't know if you had it, but it's 3-rail track on a solid metal base, and it was my dad's train set from the 50s, which he grew up with, and we had it in this big metal tin chest, and every Christmas it came out, and it stayed out for a couple of years on a desk I had until I had the homework, and then it kind of disappeared. And I grew up and it just kind of fell away. And then about 15, 16 years ago, I went on holiday and went to an exhibition, which was a permanent exhibition, and it had world and model railways. And I thought, oh, I remember enjoying that when I was young, and so I started to go to local model railway shows, which there are some on weekends in the UK. So went there, and then just ended up getting back into the hobby, and started off with a UK layout, and then moved to American when I saw that at a local show. There was an American hall, and I just really liked the scenery, the way the trains ran through the landscape. It's very different to the British sort of modelling outline.
Yeah, British is, I guess, more commuter.
We don't have as much freight at all on our railways now. Back in the day, there would have been a lot of freight, but it's always been a passenger network as well. And it's not like the US where you get freight. You do get freight only lines, but it's not like the US where freight is the major dominant thing moving on the track. For us, it is definitely commuters. So if I'm sat at my local station catching the train to work and I'm there 10 minutes early, I'll see 4 or 5 trains go past, and they'll all be local commuter trains, sometimes longer distance ones down to London, but little local ones going into Birmingham, which is the big city just up from me. And I might occasionally see one container train, but that's a rarity. And at work, I'd sat and I look out at one of the railway tracks, and I might see 2 or 3 freight trains every day, but I'd see hundreds. There'd be 2, 3 in each direction each hour of commuter on that small line.
Yeah. Your layout itself, the construction of it.
Yeah.
Did you do that by yourself, or?
I did most of it by myself. I did have help from friends. I did have an older layout which had US above and UK below, and I used the storage yard from that for this one because I couldn't bother to rebuild it all. So I involved 5 or 6 friends cutting it out and manoeuvring it down and reinstalling it incomplete, which, considering it was 12 foot wide and the room's only 12 foot, was a lot of jiggering to get it to fit. And people do come over, and I had a lot of help at the beginning with just making sure everything worked and thinking through how I was going to do the track plan and how it was all going to fit together. So, you can do an awful lot on your own, but I think you still need people to bounce ideas off.
Oh yeah. So you do have these people are actual modelers too. So
yeah, there'll be NMRA people that I know from when I was, starting modeling. They were very helpful.
Well, when you see part of it in the background, and I like the way that's kind of like the shadow box, the way you have your face done.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that theatre look. So you direct the eye down to what you want people to see and cut everything else off. Yeah.
Yeah, it really gives it a nice look. I don't know if you've checked out Troy. He's Pacific North Central. He's in the process of building a new layout, and he's done the same thing with his. Yeah, and it's
really common with all the people I know in the UK is to, put the fascias above and below to box in the layout. It's certainly normal practice.
I think it gives it a really nice look. It makes the features stand out, all that hard work you do, putting into it.
Yeah, it does. I think it finishes it off. And I do like black just because it recedes and it's plain and it's easy enough to match.
Yeah. And what is it that you take enjoyment in building the regular kits, main plastic kits, or Craftsman, or the scratch building?
I like the variety. My favorite would be sort of more Craftsman kits and the more complex things, but I do like just the ability to build a plastic kit and finish it, because a Craftsman kit can take a year plus if you're busy at work and things. And with my videos at the weekend, I don't get half as much modeling time as I used to, but I also love scratch building, so I do the mix of everything there, which is a bit of a cop out, I know. I guess my favorite is probably something in wood, or something that requires a lot of painting and weathering, because it is able to be more creative with it.
Yeah. If you could you move to your left just a little bit?
My left.
Your
way?
left. No, you move your body. I need
Oh,
shoulder to move. Because I mean, we're talking about the layout. I see a building right there on your layout, just over your right shoulder.
oh, you would pick the placeholder Walter's built-up kit. That's just there because that's eventually going to be a Craftsman kit. So at the moment, I have a lot of all my tracks done bar one section, which I'm redoing. I've got a lot of base scenery, but what I'm lacking is the structures. So I have spaces for them, and some of them have placeholders, and some of them just have a piece of blue foam, which will be the base for them when they go in. And at the moment, I've probably only got about 4 or 5 structures on the whole layout, and the rest of them are all works in progress.
Okay, so that is a plastic kit there.
It's just a Walther's built up, which I weathered a bit, but it's yeah, you know, you just buy them, and it was a really good deal somewhere. I think I got it, went very, very cheap. So I thought, well, it will just fill up a hole for a while.
Yeah, well, this here looks pretty good, doggone good, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice kit. It's I mean, it's built up. You just plunk it on the layout, and there it is. And I think there's a lot to be said for people who don't like building models or scenery. That's not their thing. That there's so much out there now you can just put on, and with just a little bit extra weathering or a little bit of tying it into your scenery, it can look amazing. And you don't have to have spent hours and hours and fortunes on Craftsman kits to get a good looking layout.
Yeah. Your lighting that you're using, because what kind of lighting are you using there? Is that just fluorescent or LEDs, or up over the layout itself?
It's fluorescent all around the edges beneath the black valance, and the lower level, the fluorescent is literally just a tube, and the ballast is somewhere else. So it's really just a narrow tube. The only bit that isn't are these lights, which you can probably see over here, and they're IKEA. I think they're supposed to look like station lights, and they're over my peninsula, which doesn't have an upper level because it would have been too enclosing in the room. So because it's got to be lit from above, I went with those because they dangle nicely above it, but they're just about eye height. So when you look at these lights, you know, that area, you need to look down at the layout where you get blinded.
Now, you later on going to try and vary the lighting on your layout. I mean, people now are getting to where they're using the warm white, bright white, and the blue light so that they can simulate a 24-hour day as it goes through.
I might do. One of the things that I modeled July 5th because that was a time that I was in the States, in the area that I'm modeling. So that week is the week that I'm modeling. And I could go night to day. It's hard with fluorescence to do that. And I don't feel like I really want to disturb all the scenery and everything to change the lights out at this point. But they are really hot. So at some point I might move to LEDs just for the lack of heat, or to reduce some of the heat build-up. Because when I've got all my fluorescence on, even if it's freezing outside, it gets quite warm up here.
Yeah, you might want to take a look at some of Troy's. I think Troy's got a video too out on how he was doing the LEDs, because they do have a sticky back.
I've got all my fluorescents. I've used them on a bookcase or things to light that, and I think they're amazing. And I got mine from China on eBay, and they were really cheap. And you know, I just thought, oh, I should have done these on my layout because they would have taken no space. But I'd done my layout lighting about 10 years earlier, so.
Well, yeah. I was just thinking about since you do have the fascia, just putting a lot of the LEDs on the fascia, since they're adhesive back, you can press them to that and be able to turn off the fluorescence and have the LEDs on.
A good idea.
To help to
I'll think about that one. I might get a bit more of my layout built first, though.
Yeah, we'll have to start doing more of our hangouts earlier in the day so you can join in with us. Yeah,
definitely.
But I mean, yeah, we do talk about a wide variety of stuff, and people come in with different problems or ideas. We all sit there and kick it around till we figure something out with it. But what has been the most interest on your layout for you?
I think I like scenery best. I'm going to admit I'm not a huge fan of laying track. Yeah, I could happily leave that, especially because this is my loft. I have a huge temperature difference. So track work is a real nightmare. You either have huge gaps in the winter or kinks in the summer if you're not careful, because it'll get down to, and I'm going to do it in centigrade, because that's kind of, I'm foreign and
Yeah.
that's what I do. So it goes between 8 and 38. So we're talking 30 degrees, which is practically double that, I think, in Fahrenheit as a temperature differential. So it's huge. And it just ends up with, a lot of challenges on the track. And I've got a lot of hidden track, which, I'm not a huge fan of, but in this size room, trying to get as much as I was into it, I probably wouldn't have hidden quite as much with hindsight. It's not hidden, it's just really hard to get into, and you end up with scratched hands trying to reach derailed trains if you're unlucky enough to have one. So, yeah, I would do, as always, I'd do things differently now if I was trying to do a layout again, but I'm still trying to put a quart into a pint pot.
Yeah. Aren't we all?
I don't know. I've seen some of your basements. I think you can get quite a few quarts in some of those.
Yeah, not in mine. I got a space about like yours, but
at least you might finish that. I'd never do a 60-foot square basement. I just wouldn't get around to finishing it, and it would cost a fortune.
Well, that's where you invite your friends over and go, whatever building you want to build and put on it will look really great.
Yeah, but they're all building stuff for their layouts.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your cameras and software that you use and do videos with.
So I do a video every week on YouTube, which I'm sure most of you people know. And I started off, and someone said to me, "Oh, iPhones are great." So I started off with just the camera I had, which was a Samsung. They've stopped doing cameras now, so it's irrelevant. An iPad and an iPhone, and I then had to get a microphone. So I now have an iPad stuck down my back with a microphone attached to it, and I have my new iPad and my iPhone straight on, iPad to the side, and then I have a camera, and I've just bought a Panasonic GX80. I think it's a GX85 in the US. They named them differently for some reason, or it's the other way around, and you've got an 80 and I've got an 85. And it does 4K video, which is why I bought it. So although YouTube only ever does 1080 or whatever across and calls that high definition, this is taking 3,500 or 3,200, whatever it is, pixels across. So that means I can zoom in a lot more. Because what I found I was having problems was if I zoom in on something and then I pick it up to work on it, it goes out of camera shot. Whereas this way I can do a wider shot and still zoom in and not pixelate the video to get the close-ups that I need when I'm working on the whatever it is that I'm working on. So I have 3 cameras, 1 in front, 2 to the side, and a separate microphone going into another iPad. And an iPhone actually takes a really good, they're all my overall shots are iPhones. And you can put them into 4K if you want, but it just uses so much gigabytes of space that
memory.
I'm not doing that for the shots other than the close-ups.
Yeah. What about your editing software?
I use Final Cut Pro. I probably could have got away with iMovie, but it's better for things like green scene, which you can do on iMovie apparently. And I've just got very used to it. So iMovie comes free with every Mac. No plug for Macs, but I got a Mac last year and I love it. And it's been great for doing video editing.
I lost your camera there, Kathy.
Yeah, my iPhone just decided to run out of power. Give me 2 minutes to run and get a battery to plug in.
Well, I'll tell you what, while you're working on that, Andy, we got anything in the Q&A?
Yes, sir. Ron Class asked an interesting question that we may get to in operations. Do you participate in operations around your area? And if so, what style of car movement system do you use? Car, waybill, timetable, and other. And I'd like to add to that, what do you see as being kind of the common or prevalent systems in Europe? And we've got one from Phil Wyman as well. Phil Wyman asks about what kind of trees that she's making, wire, wood, natural plants, which mentioned that may be that's been kind of a hot button topic in the community as of late. So getting their take on it. I mean, I've seen her videos on remaking the cheap eBay trees, which is of interest. Great for background trees, really good video. But I'd like to see, get her take on foreground tree modeling.
Yeah.
Okay, I missed all of that because I was running downstairs to get my plug-in battery.
Well,
so that's okay.
So
yeah, we can rerun, no problem.
So Ron Kleiss asks, and he's a avid operator on some communities around him. Built his railroad around operation and has shared some of that in the community. And he asks, do you participate in layout operations around your area? If so, what style of car movement system do you use? Car waybill, timetable, or other? And I'd like to add to that is, what do you see as being the prevalent or more popular solutions for car routing or operations in the UK?
I'm going to say it. I don't think operations is big in the UK. I don't know anybody other than NMRA members, so I might be completely wrong. But there's not a huge amount of it. People build layouts and they put them on at exhibitions a lot of the time. Well, they build them and they might run them, but they don't. It's not the thing that it is in the US, because our layouts aren't the size. You can't run from one town, drop stuff off, and run on to another town. You're into your neighbour's house, so it's a different type of modelling.
Right.
And I don't do operations here. I know people that do in the NMRA, and the NMRA over here just does North American modelling.
Sure.
So they do it, and I've been to layout sessions, but they're 2-3 hours drive away, and I've got a limited amount of time, and I'd rather be modelling with it than doing operations, because that's what I really like in the hobby. So I tend to do most of my operations when I'm visiting the States, and I get a chance to go and play on people's layouts. But other than that, if we were to be run over here, I mean, most people I know go down all the usual. They do the waybills, they do all the 4-card system, all that normal stuff. They read all the Calmback books and they do it. I couldn't tell you what the British scene does, and I don't see operations articles in the magazines whenever I pick them up. I just don't think it's really hit the UK. What you do see on the continent is FREMO. And FREMO stands for like Friends of European Modelling, and it everyone has a module and it has set ends. So it's very much like your FREMO, but it's more about operations perhaps than just anything else. Right. And they definitely have stations and they run timetables and they run through, and they're a lot more organised on that.
And
but that's European.
Yeah, it seems there's this gap between the two where operations fits in the middle, because a lot of the videos you see of the European modelers, they're doing a lot of automation, which simulates the that's not happening in the States, that simulates a lot of the operation and the movement of commuter traffic in an operations-looking operation, but they're not getting 20 people together drinking coffee and moving cars. At least the YouTube video is not indicating that. So I was curious about that too.
Well, where would you put 20 people in the average UK layout, I think is the thing. I look at my layout and, I could get 3-4 people up here if they were looking. If they were trying to operate, they'd be all over each other. We don't have big layouts, and a lot of people I know don't have home layouts. They have exhibition layouts, and this is a key difference. If you want to build a 20-foot layout and you haven't got 20 foot in your house, you build an exhibition layout, and that means you take it to a model railway show, and you might take it to one a month. You could take it every weekend if you really felt like it, but I don't think people ever do that much, and there's a bit of a lag across the summer. But people they build these things for show, but they'll often go to a club, and clubs will have layouts. So if they can't afford to build something in their own house, they might go to a club and build it there. But even then, I don't see operations or any of that coming into those clubs yet.
Yeah, and I will say that your layout looks like it would be fairly conducive to operations by the track plan and design, if you so wanted to. There's some operations. Also, Phil Wyman asks, and this has been kind of a hot button topic in our community as of late, and of personal interest to me as well, so I want to highlight this one, is what kind of trees do you make, Kathy? Wire, wood, natural plants, which I have seen your eBay trees that you did, and that's great for background trees, but what do you think about foreground trees?
I use a mix, if I'm honest. At the moment, I'm doing trees. I'm doing background trees, and I will do a video on my background trees, the actual trees, because it's not a method I've seen anyone else do, though nothing's new under the sun, so someone else probably has done it. And I do medium, sort of mid-ground trees, and those are all plastic, all wire twisted, all off eBay or Amazon, or because Amazon delivers about a month quicker, all sorts of things. When it gets to foreground trees, it's again a mix. I've got some, and actually I've got one here. I've got some that I just get from a local, it's a UK distributor, and this would be an example. It's just got, foam over a poly fibre, and you buy them like this and they're plastic. Yeah. And I tend to then put leaves on them. So I will put that in the foreground with knock leaves or hecky leaves or something like that on it. And I think adding the leaves makes it look good enough. You need to do something with the trunks as well.
Yeah.
I will use, I think you call them forest in a box, but it's the seam foam moss stuff as well. I don't think they look good, but they look a little bit spindly sometimes on the trunks. So I probably should do a bit more on the trunks for the ones that are really near the front. And I'm just looking at a patch of my trees at the moment that I'm putting in on the foreground. I've got some that are twisted wire I need to do some more trunks on. I haven't really done enough statement trees in foreground. I'm still getting the mid and sort of background done at the moment.
Sure.
And I've got some welding wire to have a go at doing a really nice twisted 1 or 2 trees. Nice. But to be honest, because I'm doing New England, it needs so many trees. I'm also looking at just how do you get the volume. And I don't glue them in, I just poke them in. Yep. So I might come back at some point in the future and redo them to look better. So in short, I will use plastic trees with leaves, or I'll use whatever I've got. The point is that they're big.
And there's a different availability of commercial or natural products too. Yeah. So I've been using sagebrush a lot, and Philip Wyman, who asked that question, has been making a lot of the wire trees. They're exhaustively time consuming, and as an Appalachian modeler, that's impossible. But that's of interest. Yeah. That's the couple I had for now, Johnny.
Okay. Talking about the trees. Do you ever go in and try and redetail the trunks by adding, say, like latex rubber to it or wood putty or something like that, and then come back and do the tree bark a little more defined?
At the moment, I'm doing my mid and background, so the nearest I'm going to get is painting the trunks because I want them to distinctly look slightly less detailed to add that distance. When it comes to the foreground trees, at the moment they're plunked in, and I'm in 2 minds as to whether to go and add more or just to paint and try and paint the detail on. So I'll let you know how that goes when I actually finish those sections. But there's going to be a lot of trees, and there's going to be some areas where there's trees in front and trees behind.
Yeah.
So you will see a lot of trees eventually, and I'm sure you'll see a video on them when I actually do finally decide how I'm going to do the trunks on the ones that are just poked in for now.
Well, stay tuned. Yeah. We'll come back to that one in another show. You were talking about the train clubs and groups that you have there around England and all. Are you a member of any train groups?
I'm a member of the NMRA, and the NMRA in the UK isn't the same as the NMRA. It's the same organisation, but it's got a slightly different flavour in the UK because it's all about North American modelling. If you want to model British, you wouldn't join the NMRA because you'd have joined one of your local clubs or something that might be scale specific. So there's a lot of clubs that are scale specific. You have EM gauge, Proto, 87. You'd have the equivalent. You might have the O gauge, Gauge-O Guild. You might have a narrow gauge club. I used to go to Slim Gauge Circle, which did North American narrow gauge. So all the clubs are very specific. And then you get your geographic clubs like Solihull Model Railroad Club will be my local club, or Leamington and Warwick, or 1 or 2 of the Birmingham ones. So the NMRA does North American modelling, which is why I joined it, because I chose to model North American, having been to a show that had a lot of North American content and really enjoying it. And since then, I've just got more and more involved, and I'm now over. I'm actually a director of the national board of the NMRA, and I've just started my 2nd term. And it's fascinating working with it. It's so interesting trying to work out how you take something like the NMRA that's been around since they've had the 75th anniversary, so you can do the maths. It's been around since the 30s. It's a really established club. How do you take that into the future, and how do you attract new people into model railroading generally, and where are you getting them from? So it's really fascinating to be around as people weigh up these quite weighty discussions and try and work out how to take that forward. So that I'm really enjoying that sort of piece, but it does take time away from doing actual modelling.
I think you have something of interest coming up here in the future.
I do, but it's 6 years away, or 5.5 maybe by now. So every year the NMRA has a national convention, and I'm sure a lot of you will have heard of it. The most recent one was in Indianapolis, and actually it was a brilliant convention. It's really, really good, well run, really interesting things to go and do. And the national convention is it's a week of modelling, and there's clinics and there's tours and there's auctions and there's everything under the sun to do with model railroading, and it's in a different place every year. And the board has bids come in and they have to decide where they're going to put it every year. And I was lucky enough to have my bid accepted for 2022. So that's a long way away, 2022, but the national convention for the NMRA is going to be in Birmingham, UK. We're calling it the heart of England because it sounds a bit fancier than Birmingham, though Birmingham's the city it's going to be based in. It's the second city in the UK. It's close to so many railway attractions. You can get up to York, you can get down to London easily. It's in the centre of the country. So if you're trying to persuade your other halves to come, it's got Stratford upon Avon, Shakespeare country, it's got Warwick Castle, all within spitting distance. There are thousands of historic houses, and it's Britain. Everything that Oxford's just down the road, it's an hour's away, and I went to university there, so I plug, if you come to the UK, you really should go to Oxford. It's a lovely city to go and visit. It's very nice. And it's very close to Pendon, conveniently for the men or women, don't want to be biased here, to go to it's a great model exhibition. It's not a model railway exhibition, it's an exhibition of a model railway, which, if I just explain that, it uses a model railway to describe the history of the Vale of the White Horse, and it's really fascinating amount of really detailed modelling. It's all thatched cottages, and it's just absolutely beautiful. Some of the best modelling you'll see in the world, I suspect. It's just absolutely brilliant. And just down the road from that is Didcot, which has some broad gauge and has a lot of Great Western preserved steam locos. There was one running when we went there, just shunting up back and forth. So it's a great location. Really excited about it, and it's going to be a week of model railroad and real railroads in the UK. We're going to run a pre-tour to the Welsh narrow gauge because it's just a little too far to do in a day, so I think a weekend will do it justice. And that will involve going on the Welsh Highland, the Talyllyn, the Ffestiniog, all of those great Welsh railways, which I just can't rave about enough. I love visiting them. It's a great area. And I'm just really excited to be able to show off my country and my railways and our modelling, which is very different in style to American modelling, to a whole new audience of people. Right, yeah. I've stopped now.
I've always found England to be a very interesting place. I knew a fellow, he and his wife used to come to England a lot. They were buying antiques.
Oh, yeah.
And have them shipped back. And I always told him, I said, well, if you're buying antiques and you got big trunks and all, can you slip me in there and, let me go through customs?
Yeah.
Talking about, the NMRA, the future and all, what do you think about, what's your opinion of YouTube, Facebook, and other social medias as far as railroad modeling goes?
I love it. I love it as a medium. I mean, I chose to do videos. I've been doing a word blog for ages, but I realized how much I enjoyed seeing how to do things rather than just reading about them with photos. So I think things like YouTube are so important for new modelers, for people trying to learn new skills, for people who just want to see something. You just get a whole different flavor when you watch how somebody holds an airbrush or how they mix the paint in it. I learned so much watching somebody just mix in a little, airbrush cap at the top, and it just changed the way I airbrushed totally, which wasn't hard because I wasn't very good at it at the time. And I think it brings so much more to people. I don't know about you, but I don't have a huge amount of time to go out and do social events. I don't want to lose my whole weekend to driving miles to go to a meet to come back. So I do like 3 or 4 a year for the NMRA, which is what they have, and I might do a couple of local shows. But that's my mix. That's my sort of practical modelling almost. So seeing it on YouTube just to me bridges that gap brilliantly. And there's a lot of people, I know the US is certainly like this, but there's a lot of people in Europe where it might be a long way to the next North American modeler, which is people I know out there. There may be plenty of other local railway modelers around, but if they want to talk or see something North American, it might be a lot further. There might be only 3 or 4 of them in the country that they know. So it brings people together, I think, in a way. And social media is great for doing that. It brings people together that you just would never meet otherwise. And I've met so many amazing people. And, I go to Indianapolis for the NMRA convention, and people just come up to me and go, "Oh, you're Kathy." And I'm like, "Who are you?" And then they say their name, I'm like, "Oh, yes, I know you from Facebook." So it's brilliant. It just opens up so many things, and you can see such amazing modelling. And Pinterest and some of these other sites and Instagram where people actually put up some just photos. You look at them and I find them so inspiring, and they give me so many ideas on what I could do in my modelling. And I don't just look at railway stuff, because I've never just gone, oh, I'm a railway modeller. I love looking at military. I love looking at some of the other types of modelling out there and seeing how I can bring that into my modelling, which is probably why the products that I use tend to be different to a lot of the other products that people use, because there's a lot of heavy military influence on my sort of weathering and things like that.
Oh yes, we're doing the same thing here. People are starting to get a big interest in the different techniques and all the use in the military, paints and weathering, washes and stuff like that. That has been a big help. Another good thing about YouTube especially is when new people are coming in, they've got a place they could go. And now that we're doing these shows, also we have what we call hangouts, and there's usually one going about every night of the week. People who come in and be able to ask questions when they're having problems. And
I think that's so important when you're starting, because there's no stupid questions. And when you're starting, you don't know. I look back now on what my first layout, and I came back after Hertford in 2009, which was an NMRA national convention. And I ripped out my layout and started again. So I didn't realize how many trees there were in New England. So I had to kind of redesign my layout. But I learned so much in that 4 or 5 years. And that wasn't even my first layout. It was my second. And I think you continually learn things, and you do that by talking to other people. And I think that's part of where model railroading can be very solitary. You can sit at your desk and spend hours painstakingly putting shingles onto a roof. But really, you need some input from other people to improve your modelling. Yeah.
I mean, also here lately, we've been having a few people come in that are very well known. Like yourself, you do the videos, and we're actually getting a chance to speak with you today in a real one-to-one type situation. In our regular hangouts, we have people that come in like Miles Hale, which is
I know Miles,
well known in the community as a modeler. We also have Noah, which is in our chat here, and has asked a question. Ron Kleiss, he is a very exceptional modeler. He comes in and graces us with his presence and knowledge. We have a new one that just started. He's in Canada, and that's Ralph Rossetti.
I know the name, definitely.
Yeah, he's come in. Very interesting fellow. I met him for the first time last night. Being here in the YouTube and doing what I do, I really enjoy it, because I'm meeting a lot of different people, yourself, people in Australia. We've got a few that we talk to down there. In fact, one fellow I've become good friends with. We got to be big buddies, so we tend to kid each other. I rib him in the American, he ribs me in Australian. So it gets a little comical at times. So.
Well, that's one of the things the NMRA has done for me, is I've now got friends on practically every continent, and every summer I come across for the convention, and I normally go and visit people or try and link it in. And I've just met so many amazing people through this hobby. It's great. And, I've got a great friend, Paul Hobbs, who's from New Zealand, and we sort of went off to Canada this year, and next year we've got plans of adding 5 states. We're trying to do all the states, all 50 states, and I've got to 30. So I'm adding 5 more in the middle that I haven't done yet. So, it's just great to have all these people that you meet and get to know really well. Yeah. And I wouldn't have had that without model railroading.
Yeah, we'll have to get you down here in the South.
Well, I'm coming to Atlanta in February.
Oh, you are? Okay.
South.
We'll have to email and kind of get schedules worked out and made up.
It'll be for the half-year board meeting. So, that'd be great.
Yeah. As you well know, I was trying to meet up with you at the Indianapolis convention, and that was mostly my fault, because I didn't email you earlier to tell you for sure that I was going to be there. And, Andy, I tell you, I was rather upset because we did share a house that we have rented up there, and I moped around for the whole weekend and all that good stuff. I'm just kidding with you.
I miss so many people. I just had so many people coming. Oh, when I ever went past the NMRA stand, people were going, "Oh, Kathy, you need to go and find so and so." I'm like, "Well, where are they?" "Oh, they didn't say." I'm like, "I've only got 2 hours left, and then I'm leaving, so give me a clue." I miss so many people, but I did get to meet a lot of people too, which was good.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, because I walked up to a booth and I left a note, and I said, "Well, I'll leave my number." Yeah, she just give me a call if she's going to be up here in the convention area. And the girl says, "I doubt if she's going to call you because that's the international call." And I went, "Yeah, duh." Yeah.
Yeah. No, I picked that up a minute before the banquet on Saturday night, and I left first thing Sunday to go up to Canada. So I just didn't get the chance. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I knew you were kind of in the whirlwind, being there for the convention, the business meeting, and everything. So,
yeah. It just passed. And I can't say I do much. I didn't even do many tours. I think I must have spent a lot of time talking to people. But yeah.
Well, we got February, so that's a plus.
Yeah,
that's not far away. Well, we'll kind of get back here.
I got some Q&A questions whenever you're ready for those too that are related to the NMRA. So,
okay.
And I'm glad I got to speak to you for a second. Actually, I've given Johnny a hard time over him not getting to the convention in time. I got to speak to you for a few moments in front of the NMRA booth as I was going to pick him up and give him a ride. But so, but I was kind of in a rush as well. So Tony Morano asks, does NMRA in UK tend to get younger modelers involved? Do you see more of that, or does it tend to be the same group of cranky old men that we have in the US?
Of course, we're not cranky in the UK, but there are definitely a lot of older gentlemen in the hobby. There are some younger ones, and if I look at my convention team, I would say the bulk of people are in their 50s or 60s. Looking at it, but there's a couple in their 40s, and Chris, who came over with me, Chris Ibbotson, he helped deliver the beard, and he was in Indianapolis, and I think a few people might have met him. It's a lovely chap, and he's my age, a couple of years older, so that's early 40s for those who are wondering. So there are people around who are younger and are really great modelers and are coming up and willing to get involved. What I find with model railroading is I don't know how to appeal to people my age necessarily with it if they've not done it previously, and that's what I'm struggling with myself, is especially as a lot of my friends are girls and they just kind of laugh. I've had that response, "You do what?" and just burst out laughing. My favorite one was my friend who said, "Oh, I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing with you," and I'm like, "But I'm not laughing." So you do get a lot of bemused sort of looks. Having said that, in the UK, I think crafts and that enjoyment of doing knitting and modelling and things like that. I went into Games Workshop on last week, and I just, because I walked past it, you probably get it in the US and Canada. It does a game and it does modelling, and it's got robots and dragons, which they think is a real advantage, Warhammer and stuff like that.
Right.
And it was packed full of young kids, and we're talking like probably 13, 14 to early 20s, plus a range of people up into their sort of like probably 60s. And I had a long chat with the manager about how he got young people into it, and it was fascinating, and there were some really great ideas he had. And he said something that really resonated with me, is it takes people of that age to bring people in. So the way he gets more people in, he gets one person who might be interested, and he gives them vouchers that if they bring a friend in, they both get money off. So if they want money off, they bring their friends in who also get money off. And he basically said, you need young people to get young people in. So yes, we do have younger people in the NMRA, but there are pockets in America where there's a lot of young people in a club. And I think if you have young people, it's easier to get younger people in than if you don't.
That makes sense. I could see that age disparity, and I've argued that our hobby has somewhat missed a generation, but the younger people coming into the hobby now tend to be favored to be makers and creators, and their hobby is so well suited to them. I'd like to see more opportunity to expose them to this avenue of being a maker.
Definitely. I mean, the advantage we have over things like Games Workshop, yes, they have a game. You could say we have operations, so we have something else that is like that game structure. But we just have this thing that things move.
Yep.
Games and models that are static, they don't have that appeal of something moving that railways has.
And we get the maker aspect as well as the electronics aspect, the iPhone control aspect that a lot of the youth love,
Yeah.
as do I. So that brings up the next one that you kind of touched on, and Philip Wyman asks about in the UK generally, and not just NMRA, do you see more involvement from women over men? In the US, this is a very masculine hobby, and I wonder if that same disparity exists.
Not at all. I mean, it's still really rare to have a woman. So much so that the editor of one of the UK magazines made me write an article on being a woman in an aging male hobby, which I went back and said I didn't really notice the fact that it was male. But what I noticed was people's unwillingness to take on new technology and things like that.
Sure.
And to me, I like trying new things. So that's what I found the most frustrating thing in some ways. And yeah, I've never had a problem being a woman and it is a man's hobby. You know, I've never had a problem with it at all. But you know, I'm very lucky with the people that I know, and I think the NMRA is a great organisation. And I've never had people say to me, "Oh, you're a woman, you should be modelling." I've actually had more resistance from my female friends, kind of going, "You do what?"
Right.
than from the men who go, "Wow, that's really cool." I don't know. I don't see many more women. What I see is mothers with young kids, perhaps bringing them along to things, but not so much in the NMRA, which doesn't have clubs. Club rooms. I think you need a club room, and you need to have some kind of geographical presence to get people to do that. So
Sure.
It is still men. It is still boys.
I expected that to be the case. There's a few reasons why, but that reluctance to take on new technology has been kind of a point of contention with me as well, because there's such an opportunity to take advantage of technology in what we do and to incorporate the balance of not living in a virtual world and playing video games, but bringing what technology makes sense to bring to the act of creating things, from 3D printing and the boot of laser cutters that are purchasable to the control mechanisms.
I'd love to have a laser cutter. I just wouldn't do anything else though.
That's what I want too. Everybody talks about 3D printing, but I want a laser cutter. So
actually, I designed a whole. I wanted to do a depot, and I designed it brick by brick to 3D print. And then when I output the file, I did it on Google SketchUp, and it had so many holes it wouldn't print. I was like, and one of my friends said, "You should have just done that on 2 or 3 layers of thin whatever, and your laser printer and a laser cutter." And I was like, "He's so right."
Yeah, and a laser cutter does that. Look at Monster Model Works and the brickwork that they're producing.
It's awesome, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And I've got a bit of depot as well. A laser cutter would make that easy. So 2 more real quick. Philip asks about the involvement of your significant other. Does he have any involvement, or he or she have any involvement and operate with you? Have any involvement or?
I don't have a significant other, so I'm able to please myself. So basically, if I want to fill my house full of railway stuff, I can.
Well, I wasn't sure if he was hitting it trying to get at something else otherwise, but I think that may have been his asking if he could find him a model railroader. No, he just got married, so he's a happy man. And then a question about your layout, so we can get off from that real quick, is that your layout's a double deck layout with a Nolix, and it has that ramp between the two. And I wanted to, some of the guys have asked, and I'd answered a couple of things I knew about it in the chat, but I wanted a chance for you to explain the double deck and the ramp between the two, and how you came to that decision, how that's working for you, etc.
That's one of the things I probably would do slightly differently. So I've actually got 3 decks, and the lowest level of all is a storage yard, and it's got enough you can get an arm in. It's not a huge amount of clearance, and that's the bottom of the bottom bit of my 8, and then the middle level is the top bit of my 8 folded over, and the cross at the back is sort of hidden behind buildings, which is a pain to get at, to be honest. But you know, if you derail there, tough. The thing I didn't click, and I really should have, is I've also got grades on my curves. So I've got a 3.1% ruling grade, and on my curves, that really is a struggle. And it's fine if I'm doing diesel, because they double-headed everything. So it's fine, no problem, everything gets up. As soon as I go to steam, I get a little wheel slip on the curves. So I would have done that slightly differently and probably leveled them out. But I was trying to get up from one level to another in a 12-foot square room. And there's only so much height, you know, to be able to get your arm in, and you have to run up in a space.
Yep.
So yeah, that's been a little bit difficult, and I probably would change if I had a chance. But the Nolix itself works really well. And it works because I'm in a loft. So my walls are like this, but my eave then goes out like this. So my Nolix comes out of my visible area into this sort of black hole, which is open to the elements through the eaves, but isn't really. I mean, I put all my empty boxes up there and they're fine. So it runs out through there and then runs back in higher up. So it starts sort of over there on my layout, runs up all the way around sort of 3 sides, one side of which is outside, and then pops out on the 4th side at the top. Sure. So it's got a long, it's got 36 foot of rise to get up to the upper level, really.
Well, that's not so bad. And if you've not had any problems with it, John Armstrong famously wrote a chart or an index of how to correlate the restrictive of a curve, so that if you had a 2% grade and you added a curve, it had an equating thing. That's tough to deal with. And all of us with multi-deck layouts, I'm building one as well, grades are a challenge, but so were they on the real world. So incorporating that correctly. And so you've not had any problems with that track that's not easily reachable. That's been adequate, I guess.
I always make sure that the first few times I clean my outside track, I'm running my thing downhill, not uphill. And I always double, triple, quadruple head it, so there's loads of pickups, and I use my heaviest locos. So, and then I clean it, and then my little Atlas HH660 will get up no problem with a small branch line train. And I think the key is it is a branch line. So if you want to run anything up there, it's not going to be much. It's going to be one RDC car. It's going to be like 6 or 7 boxed cars at most.
Sure.
So it doesn't have to get a huge amount up. My problem is actually more the main line corner, which is very accessible if things do get stuck on that one corner. Because it's always one corner they get stuck on. And I made the mistake of cleaning it and putting some kind of switch cleaner on it, and then it got really skiddy. So they just went, didn't go anywhere on that particular corner. So I now don't clean it with the same. I don't leave any residue on, so it's a bit better. I tried bullfrog snot, but then all that steam locos I put it on just picked on the points instead and came off there. So I need to work a bit more on their traction. And some of them have traction towers, which we all love to hate, but do actually help with the curves and the grades. So
yeah, well, what I use to clean my track with is just strictly alcohol.
I tend to use switch cleaner, Servicol, on it. I bought a can years ago and it's still going. I will admit at the moment I don't clean it that often. So yeah.
You mentioned traction tires. I either saw in a magazine or it was a YouTube video. But if you have loco steam engines that you're having a hard time finding traction tires, or you lose a tire, it's a holiday weekend, the stores are closed. What this person was doing was using the shrink wrap. Like you do on electrical wires and stuff.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it'd be big enough, but
get one that just did fit over the wheel, or even if it's a little big, fit loose, because it is shrink wrap, shrink it down. And he says sometimes you'll have to use 2 layers. But he's found that to work really good for replacing traction tires.
That's a good idea. I'll remember that one.
Yeah. I try to do this every now and then on my shows, come up with something.
Oh, that was a cracking one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I have to admit, every piece of rolling stock is off because I've been doing scenery on the upper layer and raining glue and gunk down, and I didn't want to get any of it on my rolling stock, so it's all just off at the side. So I'm really looking forward to finishing doing all this really messy work, which is the kind of ground gunk layer going on. And I've still got a couple of that corner over there to do, but I'm really looking forward to getting that finished so I can actually get some rolling stock back on and run some trains again.
Have you heard of ground goop?
I have. I'm a little bit lightweight on my scenery at the moment. I've just literally got plaster cloth on and I painted it brown, and I put a layer of I made my own kind of green goop for the hills, and for the bit at the bottom I literally just put some ground foam over it, and I'm going to put grass on top. But I tend to use sculptor mold or something like that and colour that. I've heard of it, but I haven't felt tempted to go beyond that and my grout, which is my favourite thing. So I just put tile grout everywhere. I've got entire yards of tile grout. It goes on as probably the most common thing on my layout for scenery. Stuck anywhere, tile grout it. Use it for roads, use it for scenery, anything. So the amount of round tile grout I go through is quite a lot, which is why I don't want my stock underneath it, because it kind of comes through the holes on the plaster cloth. But a little bit of glue and something on top is what I'm doing at the moment, because my upper level I want to be very lightweight. There's not a lot holding it up. It's a few bits of wood onto my purlins and my roof, so I don't want to put a lot of weight on it.
That's one thing I liked about the ground group is relatively lightweight too.
Yeah.
It's basically just vermiculite, which is used in potting soil stuff, paint, glue, and some paper mache in there. Yeah, I've used it. Yeah, it seemed to work pretty good. Let's talk a little bit about your videos.
Okay.
Won't get too in depth on that, but when you first started out with videos, about what was how did your how-to videos start out to what you're doing today?
I started out more or less in the same format. So every week I do a video, and it's on something that I started off doing mini dioramas and doing water, because a lot of people are scared of doing water, and I just am probably quite fearless and go and shove water everywhere. So I've got seas and rivers all over my layout. And I did it in NHO and O and 1 to 35, hence the Mini-Cathys were in those scales, because I wanted to have the different scales. But in reality, I don't really model N, so I didn't do as much in N. And HO and O would be my main scales. And when I want a diversion from model railways, I'll go off and do 1 to 35. So we'll talk about that later. So what I'm sort of changing from doing now is I did loads of really nice dioramas and, waterfalls and rivers and that. But they're not on my layout, and my layout is languishing. And we kind of mentioned that convention coming up in 6 years. And when I got awarded the bid, a number of people said to me, "Oh, we're looking forward to seeing your layout." And I was like, "Oh crap, you actually want to see my layout in real life?" Oh, I may actually have to do something on it. And whilst I've been doing the videos, I've done nothing on my layout at all. All my modelling has been on these dioramas. So now I'm trying to actually do things that I can put on my layout, or things that I actually need to do for my layout. Yeah. So that when I'm doing modelling, it's actually useful for me, as opposed to just creating loads of dioramas. And I'm still going to do dioramas because I love doing different things and using different techniques. And it's a great way to try out a technique on a small scale. But I'm not going to do as many of them. So I've got plans for a few over the next year, but not as many.
Yeah, dioramas is a good way of learning a new process, trying something out, like you were saying, and just to see if it's going to work or not. I mean, this way you're not doing it on the layout. So if you didn't get it right or didn't like it, you're not having to tear it out.
It's worth saying that a lot of my layout is actually dioramas. So when I bought way too many Craftsman kits, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that, but I look at my 12-foot square room, and even though it's got 2 scenic layers, there is no way every kit that I own is ever going to fit on this layout. Mm-hmm. And that's really like, so I've just got loads of, what do I do with them? Do I build them? Do I not? So what I've done in sort of probably about 8 spots, I've got lift outs where they're going to be a standard sort of front and size, and I can just literally put multiple buildings in the same spot. So I can build a diorama, enjoy doing it down in my kitchen, which is more fun to model in than my loft, which gets very hot in the summer and cold in the winter. And I can model in my kitchen in comfort, and then I can just bring it upstairs and pop it on the layout. So you can probably see the fascia changes colour about just to my left. Hang on if I do that. Just here. This is like one of the slots for one of my dioramas, and it's downstairs at the moment, and it'll pop in there and just, I've got 3 buildings planned, 3 Craftsman kits, I've got them all out, all the bits, and I can pop them into there when I'm done, and they can, just, when I'm bored of them, they can go in my bookshelf downstairs or something. And just and that it kind of like maximizes the amount of space. So I think dioramas are excellent because they're easy to model. You can do them in bite-sized chunks. You can do a much easier you can do a better standard if it's right in front of you on a workbench than if it's trying to reach the back of somewhere on your layout. So I'm really trying to get all the bits in between on my layout done, and then the dioramas will follow afterwards.
I'd read an article one time about a fellow that had a layout. He did operations on it, had a fair size group of people come by, and you build your layout and you're doing operations. These people are coming over once a month to do the operations, but the layout stays the same because everything's attached to it. Well, what he started doing was he built a bunch of dioramas per se,
Yeah.
with his buildings and all. They had specific size bases so they could stay right in that area of the layout. For a couple of months, he leaves these buildings there and then he takes those out. He's got others he drops right in because the base is all the same size.
Yeah.
Now it gives his layout a whole new look and feel. And he can mix and match it up too. And he said that his operating group really enjoyed that because now it has some variety.
Yeah, and I think that's variety is the spice of life. And I think it's so important to be able to see, a lot of people finish their layout and then go, what next? And if they're not into operations, what do? Well, I could just pop one bit out and build another bit to go in the same place. Oh. Yeah, I thought he froze as well. I thought, do I carry on talking? I can do that.
So we had a couple questions for the Q&A, so let's cover some of those while he works out his internet connection. So you've done a few of these dioramas, like the road diorama recently that you'd worked on a few videos. Does that have a place on your layout? It looked like you had placed it on the layout after.
It's down there. I've got the rest of the road still to do. So yeah, that goes into a corner on my diorama, and that's probably the first thing that I start to do that's going to be used on my layout. Because, I've got loads of roads in my city scene. So it was good to have a practice and be able to actually use it afterwards. So it's there.
Sure, it is an interesting technique that you'd used. Roads is another one of those little hot button items. We had several techniques explored on the channel, so it seems to be you're in line with a lot of things we talk about for some reason. Every now and then we'll have these conversations about how to do something, and then all of a sudden you drop a video on that. So I don't know if you're tied in with the NSA or something that's getting you our information, but good job. So
just where I'm coming next, I've got my plan for the rest of the year of what I'm doing, and every now and then I add something new in. And what I find more and more is, I think I'll do a video on that, and then it ends up being 6 videos or 7 videos. So my scale house has ended up being 12 videos.
Wow.
I know. I didn't quite manage to get there, but somehow it ended up as 12. Because one of the things people said was your videos are too long. They're just taking too long. So I've deliberately tried to shorten the videos. And by doing that, I might end up splitting, say, roofs into 2 parts. Here's the basic roof. Here's the add-on bits.
Well, that's always going to be a complicated thing to appease people, because if you make a short video, people will always say you left stuff out, you could have made a longer video. That tends to be the biggest argument with some people, is that it was too short, you didn't cover it, you missed stuff, and then if they're too long, so you're never going to appease everyone. Ron Kleist asked a question too that of a lot of interest to us is in water modeling, which I know you do a lot of, and that's been what drew me to finding your channel originally. He says, what's the coloring that you're generally using for the base before applying the resin? But while a lot of us have watched your videos, maybe you could give us kind of a brief synopsis of your pigment process.
It depends what you're modeling. So I often just use black, and I put the color into my resin. So if I look at my water scene, it looks grey when you look at the water, but the actual base color was just black, because I put 2 pours of resin on and put quite a lot of colour into the water. If you look at my river that's over there, the water itself is practically clear. It's got a little bit of brown in and a little bit of green, but not that much. And I actually painted the base. And I just paint them with acrylics. And if I'm doing a rocky base, then I will use just cheap artist acrylics and just put down talus and stones and whatever and just paint them with that. And I might do something really fancy, but I probably won't. And then my first layer of resin will normally have quite a dark colour in, and then my subsequent layers will get lighter. But it depends how much I want the stones to show through. So it is a big mix on the water as to what I'm modelling. But I don't think you can go wrong with black if you're putting a colour in your resin.
Right, that makes sense. At the end, a couple more questions. So the background, is that photograph or painting that you have for your backgrounds?
It's a mix. So my sky I painted from photos I took July 5th in America. So I painted all the sky, Most of it, on all the upper level, the distant hills are like trees. They're just bits of foam board, which is my go-to modelling thing for thin space, and ground foam or whatever on them. The lower level does have some trees, and it has a couple of tree backdrops, but they're always in the backdrop. And when I get to the city, I'm going to use a lot more photos. So my buildings have got a lot more photo sort of onto foam board again, and put up there as buildings to get that kind of depth and distance. The trick is tying those photos into your actual modelling. You don't want them to look too fake. So where I haven't got a lot of depth in a scene, so the bit of B, which is right behind you and you can't see, is actually, I've only got a few inches deep, and I wouldn't put a photo on that because the models in the foreground would just jar against it. But where I've got more depth and the photos are set back a bit more on the sort of scenery, I've tended to use photo backdrops. But everyone has the same ones. That's the worry.
Did you miss me?
I missed you, John. I had to talk to someone else instead.
Oh man, I tell you what, between Google and my internet.
Yeah, do you know, internet sometimes just dies and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, my son has his own business, and right in the middle of putting in a contract, and the internet dropped. Oh, yeah. He was mad because another 2 hours is starting over.
Oh, yeah.
But all righty. Yeah, I'm back, I hope. I got to get me some more mice to turn the wheels faster. Hopefully, I guess you and Andy were talking about the just background scenery or whatever.
Yeah, and a little bit on water as well. So.
All right, because I was going to ask you, do you have a part that you have a bigger interest in that you really like to model? What is your biggest interest in modeling?
I do like scenery and structures probably best. I like the idea of doing a world in miniature. So for me, it's about putting everything together into a scene. And I love creating that scene and making it look as real as possible. But within that, you know, I like all the elements. So I like weathering. I like the arty side of things. But I also like getting things run. The thing I love about modelling is when you get bored of one thing, like I really don't want to see another tree again, I can go and do something completely different. I can go on and, you know, go and look at NMRA, or I could go and lay some track. Should I decide I want to do that? You know, there's just always something you can go and do that's different when you're fed up of one area, which when it's track laying isn't quite as long as perhaps when it's scenery. So I've been in trees for about a year now.
I have got a question for you. That is, all right, we're working on our railroads. We're creating these scenes. Mm-hmm. You ever let your mind kind of drift off and you kind of immerse yourself into the scene and start thinking of a story, you know, or about the life of that scene?
No, I don't. No, actually, no, that's not something I do. I can imagine the Mini-Cathys running around having fun, but that's about as near as I get to it.
Okay. I catch myself sometimes. I'll be at a layout tour, open house, and looking at scenes. Of course, I grew up from the 50s, 60s type era, and also people modeling the 40s and the 30s. You know, got a little more knowledge of that. Yeah, I see these things. I was sitting there going, yeah, wow, I haven't seen that in a long time. You know, the signage and the way the people are dressed and stuff like that. I'm kind of a people watcher, you know, anyway.
I like the idea of taking a famous painting and recreating that. And I've seen that done a couple of times in models. And that to me is quite funny. It's just normally one scene on their layout, but you know, it's taken something, the Edward Hopper house or something, you know, and created it. And I think that's a fascinating thing to do.
I did once on a open house. I was standing there looking at something, and this couple had come by, and the woman was looking at it, and she was asking, well, why is it this way or why is it that way? And I don't know. I'm not a big storyteller, but yeah, I just got to start talking with her and going into it. And next thing I realized, I kind of immersed her into that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she just kind of stopped and she goes, "Boy, you're good." I almost felt like I was standing there on the sidewalk actually talking to Fred there. Of course, another one sitting there. And you know how people, they'll be at open houses and they like to touch.
Oh, yeah.
And these two girls are standing there. They were looking at a river scene. And I could see the hands starting to come up. They wanted to touch, see what that water felt like. And just as she got there, I said, "You did see the sign for the alligators." And she drew that hand back rather quick. And then she, "There's no alligators there. It's not real." Yes. Yeah, but you were thinking about it. Yeah.
I've actually put acetate in front of mine, more to stop elbows than anything else up in a loft. There's not a lot of space, and I found I was clunking loads of things. So a little bit of acetate stops me going every time people come up and, start getting a bit close.
Some of your latest videos, you was working on a culvert scene.
I was, yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about that? That was rather interesting scene. I mean, you combined quite a few techniques, and I mean, you're doing the water.
Yeah, it's actually 4 different culverts, and I've actually got them on the side here. So this is a example of one of my culverts, and this is the one with a grill and water. So yeah, I had a pile of Woodland Scenics culverts I'd made up, and they're going on a little river that runs down through the city area. So I got them there, and I thought they'd be good for video. And there was a couple of products I wanted to try out. A Grelin Earth from Citadel Paints cracks when you it dries and creates cracked earth. So I wanted to try that. So I've got one with cracked earth on, which was you're not going to see. It's quite subtle, really. We're definitely not going to see this down there. But anyway, a little bit of cracked earth. And I also got, I wanted to try some MIG mud, which I'd bought, and a couple of other things, and micro balloons. How do you get the foam? So rusty pipes. So I used it as an excuse to try 4 different types of modelling, which is always fun to do.
Yeah.
New product. Love trying them.
I really liked those videos, how you really got to show how you were using the stuff. Yeah, cracked mud was very interesting to see that.
It works really well. And I've seen it on a lot of gaming type modules, because they're only about this sort of size quite often, the bases. And, it's great to see some of these techniques and then be able to use them and put them into a model railroad context. Yeah,
I did have a question here that I was going to get to on techniques and all your weathering techniques, like what you were doing on your scale. Is that your latest video?
It's Scale House.
Yes, so Scale House.
Go in before I can do all my tarmac area in my because I need to do the.
I believe it was there. You were.
Oh, he's frozen again.
He's in a wash. I normally, guys don't read the instructions, but when you're using these newer paints like Vallejo, there are pigment paints and all it settles. So we have to shake it up.
Yeah.
To get it all mixed again for it to actually work right. And what was kind of interesting, I didn't even think about it. You were, your street scene. It was your street scene is what it was. You were doing some washes, but you didn't want that, full wash. You didn't want that real subtle look. I mean, you wanted to keep it subtle, not a really standout type thing. So you didn't shake the bottle.
I do that a lot with the dark one. I rarely shake that one totally because I just find it's too dark. But the neutral one, I've actually got one pot. You'll find I keep using the wrong one in the video. I've got one pot that's just a sludge at the bottom, so I almost use it like a paint. And I have actually put extra thinners in and shaking it up. But I will go through my wash thin, the liquid in it, the solvent, much quicker than the pigment. So I end up with a nearly empty one. I've still got a good amount of pigment left at the bottom. So obviously I'm using them more thinly. Depends what I'm doing though. And they do settle out, as you say. So you do have to reshake them, the washes, because they're enamels, but they've got quite a heavy particle compared to, say, the solvent. And,
Yeah, because I was watching that and I'm sitting there going, well, shoot. I said, here we are. We'll put a dab out and start thinning it down to get the effect we want. Well, just don't shake the bottle. Let it settle. It's already thinned itself down. Yeah, you're getting the look that you're trying to get by using a lot of thinner and all.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked a lot about train modeling. Of course, I don't know why, this being a train show and all, but a little bit more of a personal note, just for general interest. Have you got any other hobby interest?
Well, apart from my secret addiction to the Xbox Halo game at the moment, the main thing I like doing is sci-fi. I mean, my mum brought me up on Doctor Who, which I don't think as many Americans were brought up on as perhaps as many Brits. But Doctor Who, Blake 7, Space 1999, that was my childhood staple. Star Trek. I mean, they're doing their 50-year anniversary, and I wasn't there, but I watched all the repeats. So I've done Star Trek the whole way through. And I just love that fantasy world. Again, it's about creating a world. So at the moment, I'm doing little Halo models and little Wegos just for fun. And I'm not videoing them or anything. And trying out loads of different weathering techniques. So I did try out some AK Interactive heavy and light chipping solutions, which are like hairspray, but heavy and light chipping. So they're supposedly more controlled. And I have to say, I took a scouring pad to them to actually get them to come off. So obviously, I put them on a little bit too strongly, the paint. Yeah. And it's great. I love that weathering aspect, and that sci-fi is just so much fantasy. So a lot of the diorama bases I might be doing coming up may well be to put those on. But it's the same technique whether you're doing it in HO or not, if it's ice or something. So I might do a sort of icy season in the winter.
Well,
yeah.
I think I did see an alien sneak in on one of your videos here just recently, there towards the end.
Yeah, there's a few aliens coming in space. I mean, actually, Mini-Cathy, yeah, she more or less escapes showing them. Yeah, they, yeah, I love them. But I like the whole mecha thing, which is Machine and Krieger or Gundam or Bandai or some of these you see. I mean, I say I've got the Halo ones because they're quite fun. And what I like about a lot of those kits is they're just slot together plastic. So I love the Transformer kits. You can get these dual model kits that are really great. And they literally just snap together. And then you've got these snap together kits. And do you paint them? How do you make that self-coloured plastic look real? And can you do it by weathering, or do you need to paint them? And actually, quite a lot of the time, when I'm trying out techniques to avoid having to paint, because they've already multicoloured all of these kits with the different plastics. And quite often they put decals and stuff on as well. And so you're trying to get the plastic to look like paint. It's been fun. And it's just completely different, which is always fun to do for a change.
One of our challenges is, how do you take plastic and make it look like wood?
I'm doing that next week, I think, on my video. So, there we go. But it's only a really basic one. It's just creosoted wood, which I think is a lot easier to do. How do you make plastic look like wood? Well, watch next week's episode.
Yeah.
You can find out.
Well, we're kind of coming up on the witching hour, so I've got just a couple of more questions here. Make them real quick. How about a challenge in the hobby for you?
I think my two challenges at the moment are, one, being a director of the NMRA, trying to work out what to do to attract youngsters in, and how that's all going to work out going forward, and how we do that, and how the NMRA deals with that and survives into the next, millennium or whatever. So that's a challenge on one sort of strategic level. Challenge for me personally is, well, I've got my convention coming up in 2022, which is 6 years away, and I'd like to get my layout actually looking presentable. And I bought the material to do the curtains underneath to hide my junk 5 years ago, and I've hung the kind of curtain wire, and it's stuff like that. It's getting all those finishing touches and actually building a lot of it. I mean, I've still got a whole section of plywood that's just a steam servicing yard, and I've got a huge amount of blue foam around which needs buildings. I've got a city to build. I've got a lot to build, and it's 6 years. I will have a full-time job, and it's and I'm doing a video, and all my time goes into videos. So you are definitely going to see a lot more stuff on my layout coming up, because I've got this challenge now doing that for the next 6 years.
You need to check out Ron Kleiss. You were talking about your skirting on the lower level there. Ron did something rather interesting using Velcro to attach the skirting.
I have used Velcro, and I found, and I'd be interested to know how he dealt with this. I used the sticky back stuff, and after a while, it started to de-stick, and it started to come off. So I sewed it onto the material, but where it was attaching onto the back, which was hardboard, I think, on that one. The hardboard isn't particularly, it's quite fluffy and it's not particularly solid. And I just couldn't get the Velcro to stick to it. And that was on my first layout. And that was in my lounge, so it was all the way down the side. So it was great at first, but over time, that Velcro just didn't have the lasting power.
So, I'm not sure how Ron put his up. He did do a video on it. My suggestion would be is 2-part epoxy.
Probably you need something like that. I mean, I just had the glue that was on the back of the Velcro.
Yeah, because the 2 parts it's kind of thick. You can kind of work it into a rougher surface. Yeah.
I mean, I've gone with hardboard again on this, so the inside surface is very rough. It's very hard to attach to, but it's much cheaper and easier to cut through.
Because you can't really put a screw through that, because then it'll come through the face of it. So because it's only 1/8 of an inch thick, so
might be 3 or 4 mil.
Yeah,
that's the transatlantic difference.
Yeah. All right. Well, you talked a little bit about the girls, but how did the Mini-Cathys come about?
Well, I was looking for something interesting to do on my videos that was slightly different to everybody else. And I did a video on scale where I had the Mini-Cathys in, and then they just morphed into having their own episode every week. And sometimes I just stand there in front of the camera, in front of my blue screen, and go, it's blue because I stupidly bought a green t-shirt, and just go, huh, what am I going to say this week? And then I have to think about what the Mini-Cathys are actually going to be doing. But you know, it's great fun to try out some techniques. So I was trying out things like tracking, which I'm not great at, and you know, different techniques with things. So it's just a little bit of creativity, which, you know, is what it's all about, really.
Yeah, it's your personal touch to your video.
Yeah,
I enjoy it. I do. I enjoy watching the Mini-Cathy, see what kind of mischievousness they're going to come into. You know.
Oh yeah, they're a right pair.
I'm waiting to see how Mini-Cathy gets back, or N-scale Kathy.
Mill-scale Kathy, 1:35.
Yeah, mill-scale Kathy.
Yeah, N-scale Kathy's having a bit of a tantrum about the fact she's missing a lot of the time, and she's out, you know, searching for her. But you know, it's quite funny. Yeah, they're fun to do, and they've all got their own little characters. HO's a bit blank, but N-scale's the little petulant child. You know, she stamps her foot a lot and has hissy fits, and Mill-scale's in charge. She's definitely taking the military vibe from her scale. And O-scale's just a bit of a follower of Mill-scale. She's a bit bigger, but she tends to fall in line and follow.
Yeah.
So yeah, sad. I'm talking about myself in the, little, whatever.
Well, if I was a psychologist, I'd probably say, the multifacets of Kathy, huh?
Yeah. Well, they must all be me. I'm not that great an actress.
Andy, have we got any Q&A there? Or?
Yeah, I've got a few items for you. Coming back to the NMRA stuff, what was the favorite, least? I'm assuming that someone knows you've been working on your MMR. So, what was your, if so, what's your favorite and least favorite certificates that you've earned? If so, are you going to do more than the required 7? And I'd like to get more of what your general take on the MMR program and the achievement program in general is, because from an NMRA perspective.
Okay, so I got my MMR a couple of years ago, and I was challenged to do it and finish it off in a year, having been working on it for 6-7 years at that point. And I really regretted doing it so quickly, because it ended up being almost like a chore to get it done. And it actually was really difficult because I'd left all the stuff I hated to the end. So I would say to people, it's a great program because it makes you do stuff you wouldn't do. Yeah. And it makes you do a variety of things. And you only have to do 7 out of 11 certificates. So the chances are the stuff you hate, you don't actually have to do. But I ended up having to scratch build a loco because at that point I hadn't got any cars and I needed to do one of cars or locos. So I did a little speeder, which was okay. You know, it passed, got its marks eventually. But the thing I hated, we were talking about this earlier before the show, hated I had to do my track laying, and you have to lay 3 pieces of track and run something through them under its own steam. That's what the AP certificate says. So I did some O-scale modules, ON30, which I've since decided to rationalise back to HO, so I'm not doing ON30 anymore. But I had these sort of, modules, and I had one module which had 3 pieces had dual gauge and a crossing and a normal turnout on, and it had standard gauge O, which I bought a switcher for, and then the ON30 track. And I just, I'm not an engineer, I'm an artist. So that will be enough of, that's probably, it's like I'm looking at my scale house now. I've built it and done these 12 episodes on it, and I'm thinking, now I'm going to have to lay the track on it. So that's not going in a video because I don't think I'll be that good at it. So we'll weather it all in and hide it with tarmac later. So I think it's really good. I was very lucky because I got my volunteer and my official and my author. And actually, I got my author, half the marks can come from a website. And I had a blog. So I got half my marks from my blog, actually, of which I'd written loads of stuff for various things. And since then, I've written loads of other articles and things that would have counted. And I had a couple of articles in UK national magazines which counted. So those 3 were quite easy. And it was when I got my official one, having been on the board, that I managed to get my 7th. Scenery is actually one I don't have because I just didn't have enough square foot of completed scenery, and you need something like 32 square foot or something, and that's actually quite a lot on a layout to do because I'm doing all the scenery but I haven't done all the structures. So it's not just scenery, you have to do the structures and everything else that goes in to complete your scenery. So that one, and they insist on backdrops and stuff like that. So anyway, so I might do all 11 eventually. At the moment, I'm enjoying not having to do it, having got my own art, because it did dictate me doing stuff that perhaps I wouldn't naturally have done at that point in time. But I would say if you're doing it across a period of time, you can, if you're clever, start at the beginning and use the same things. So if I have prototype modelers that basically says you take a photo and you copy it, and produce that scene, almost so that you can't tell the difference. And there has to be a couple of scratch built items, a couple of bought items, a bit of scenery, a bit of structure, all that kind of stuff in it. And I've got the perfect picture of a depot, an RS3 and a couple of boxcars and a caboose. And that's why I changed one side of my top layer so I could fit that in. So I can do that, no problem at all. And if I thought about it from the beginning, I could have used that scratch built structure for my structures. I could have used something in the cars. I could have used the RS3 for the locos. I could have actually used that scene to generate a lot of the other AP certificate stuff.
Sure.
But I thought about doing it after the end. So, if you're clever and you look at it from the beginning, and I would just say, don't worry about the paperwork. When you put stuff into contests or put it into judging, you need to have good paperwork. You need good photos and stuff to show people that what you're modelling looks like the real thing. It's all about showing that it looks like the real thing and showing how much work you put into it. So you want to detail that so people can see that you've done work and that you've kit bashed this and you've scratch built that and you've painted this and you did this decal from scratch or whatever. But actually, I think doing it over a period of time, just whilst you're doing your normal layout and trying to incorporate it in. So, the track plan, you have to do this track plan that shows all this stuff. You don't have to build that track plan. You just have to build a portion of it. So I put on something that was out of my room for the bits I didn't have. Actually, on this layout, I had everything in it that I needed. But when I first did it, my layout didn't have enough stuff on it. So I just did an extension that didn't really exist in real life.
Sure. And
that's on the track plan. And that's fine because all you have to do is show a track plan with some of the stuff. When it comes to electrical or when it comes to civil engineering, it doesn't take much to super elevate your curves. If you think about it when you're laying your track, super elevate them at the beginning. That's one of your bits done already. So if you look at it all at the beginning, when you're starting a layout, it's easy to do. And that's when I came into the program. I think where it's difficult is when you're already a long way through building a layout and you then want to start doing it, because things like electrical and civil engineer, you may not have built it with that in mind. But actually, most of the stuff they do is there and you can find it somewhere on your layout. So if you look down their list, and if you've got something you think demonstrates something that's not particularly clear around about DCC, you've done some amazing something, you can normally find some way of putting it in if it's a good piece of modelling. You can talk to your AP person, about where can I fit this in. And you can normally get there just on what you've done on a normal layout. And that was the aim of the NMRA, that, they took something that anybody could do, but not everybody would do.
Right.
And I think that's what it is. It's a challenge for those people who like challenges.
Well, that's exactly the point, or at least the point as a lot of us understand it, is to expose people or to encourage outside of that one thing they are
Yeah.
okay with and do these other things to meet the challenge for the sake of meeting the challenge.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
so
wouldn't have
that's a,
hand laid track without it. But now I've got to do my scale house, and I've got to put a couple of points in. It doesn't bother me because I've done it, and I know I can do it, and it's fine. So yeah, I think it's a fascinating journey, and I would recommend it. It has highs and it has lows, and I think some of the lows are when you first start out and your models aren't that good, and you perhaps take them to a contest and you get some quite rude comments in some places, or you can take them the wrong way. And certainly the British reading is really good. They give you very constructive comments, but I've heard other people have had issues, and I don't. That's changed. I think what you see now is everyone's about trying to celebrate what people have done and encourage them. And but people just don't like being criticised sometimes, so they struggle a bit with that. And you just have to get used to that and go, well, this is to encourage me, this is to improve my modelling, and I'm not going to do that unless someone points out how I could improve it. And you need to take it in that viewpoint and try and improve. And it's there to improve your modelling as well, because you get somebody outside of you going, that's great, but have you thought about doing this, this, and this, which would improve it?
yeah, so it's a confidence builder, or it's proven to be a confidence builder for you. You knew you did it once, you can do it again.
Yeah.
Coming back to your modeling too is the sci-fi stuff, which I also found that question particularly interesting as a dyed in the wool geek of Star Trek growth and a Doctor Who fan.
Yeah.
Do you intend or do you find any way to integrate those two hobbies together, or is it just a skill building and satisfying two different parts of your personality?
I'm not sure I want to put aliens on my HO New Haven layout. I'm
No,
not going there.
no,
If I was doing New Mexico Roswell, I might consider it.
yeah.
No, I do keep them separate, and they're in different scales, but it's the same paints that I use, and it's the same products. I just do it in finer detail on a 1 to 35 than you might achieve on a HO, or perhaps than I'm willing to achieve on a HO, because I could paint those tiny little things in, but I'm not that
Of course.
anal. So, I love it because you're able to try some of the techniques you see in the military modelling world. And, if it doesn't quite look like the real thing, you go, well, the rust was different on that planet.
And then
Yeah.
one last question about your layout that people always tend to ask or care about, which may not be that deciding of a factor, but people always ask about what Digitrax system or what DCC system have you chose, and I also have curiosity of how far you've kind of went with your electronic stuff. Is it just a basic DCC system, or have you are you doing anything like signaling or accessory control, etc., or is that a future prospect?
Okay, so I have NCE because I like it. I went to visit friends' Digitrax layouts and I thought the buttons were too small and I didn't like the controller layout. So
Yeah.
NCE, huge fan. I have got it when I had a PC last year on NMRA, and I'd got a lot of the sort of switch lists and stuff like that going through there, all that kind of side of things. All my turnouts operate through DCC, and I don't have any fascia anything at all because I want the clean look. So I just have a little plan, and this has got the numbers on. So if you want to know which number you throw, you do that. I have a macro that throws the whole main line to set, so you don't have to worry about all the little sidings being set. If you want to run a mainline train through, you just do macro 99, the whole lot sets. And for my storage yard, you can press a button if you feel like it'll set a route, or you set a route, you don't set the turnouts.
Right.
So again, that's all macro driven through their little boards that do those kind of steps.
Sure.
I am going to put all my lighting on. At the moment, I've very stupidly got an awful lot of different voltages. So I put incandescent bulbs on, and sometimes they were a bit, I wired too many in, so it needs to be 18 volts. Sometimes it needs to be 9. Sometimes it needs to be 6 and 12 and 3. So I need to just go through and rationalize some of those, because some of them are off, you call them wall watts, but just, those little things that plug in. So, you can run a few off those, but I'm ending up with too many now. So my lighting will eventually go on. Mostly my lighting at the moment is dangling wires, waiting for me to decide which solution I'm going to use, because I'd like to be able to turn them on and off individually. And so when it goes to night, you can have some lights coming on and off and things like that. So I haven't got that far yet. I did put a complete sound system in, which again was off my PC, and it had a surround sound, has 5.1, so you can have 6 channels. So it had 6 channels coming out of a sort of speaker, because my PC would do that, and it went into 6 different sort of computer speaker systems around the layout. I've gone to Mac and haven't re-put it on there, so I need to think about what I'm going to do on my Mac. Whether I try a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino or something to run that can stay permanently up here rather than have to load my Mac up every time I want to put sound on. So I need to think a bit about that, and that's all in the future.
And we've done some shows recently, and I have a lot of interest in it personally on using some of the small controller boards to control lighting and do that. So we're doing some of that on this community. Barry's doing some of that, so that look out for more of that from us. Rod added that he uses the pre-pleated skirt for his below his fascia that probably puts less resistance on the Velcro. Although I've used an adhesive on like some LED lighting I put above my workbench so far. I went back and put contact cement on top because I didn't trust that. One last question is that UK modelers tend to be focused on using enamel paints, one of the guys is mentioning. Personally, I like using different types of solvable paints, water versus whatever, so they don't mix, as I could do layers. Do you see a lot of the UK modelers using or having a bias toward enamel paints? And do you think why?
Humbrol is definitely the number one paint you see around. It's been around for generations and people are used to it. I grew up on Humbrol tinlets, and I think that is just, people know them.
Right.
If I'm honest, they airbrush better if you use a solvent. If I'm really struggling to airbrush them, say I'm doing a metallic, I've actually got a lacquer thinner for Tamiya as opposed to the normal thinner. You have to import it from the Far East because it's practically illegal it's very hard to get in this country and almost illegal to ship. But when you get it, it just sprays metallics so much better. So I think it's about people have grown up with it. And we talked about, there's a lot of people of a certain age here and they've been using that for 60 years. They're not going to suddenly do it all over and try something new. I wanted to go to acrylic for my health as much as anything, and it's just, Humbrol's great, but so I've moved over entirely to Tamiya and Vallejo, and I've got other paints. I always prime with a proper car paint primer or a Tamiya lacquer primer because I do want that base coat primed really well. But after that, it's always Tamiya or Vallejo. Tamiya because it's cheaper, easy to find, and it's got a lot of military colours. Vallejo because when you can't quite get the colour you want, Vallejo will have it.
Absolutely.
But I find Vallejo doesn't. I spray it probably a little bit thin, and I think sometimes it doesn't have the staying power. So if you're doing a lot of weathering, I find I can sometimes scrub the Vallejo off. Yeah. I've been known to do that. Hence my putting a Tamiya coat that's close underneath. But it's great. I know which orange is exactly the orange I want for my New Haven. It's bright orange and it looks great. It's the right colour. They've got 3 oranges and I chose the best one. I know which green is exactly the green I want. So, Vallejo's got so many colours. You'll probably find a colour that matches what you want, but it doesn't do railroad colours.
And modelers don't, why change something if it works? So if Hammer paints have worked for a long time, people don't change them. In the U.S., we got forced to rediscover paint because Polyscale and some of these other paints basically and Floquil. And I love Polyscale. I really love Polyscale, and it went away. So whereas you guys haven't been forced.
Well, Humbrol's still there. If I go into Hobbycraft, which is probably the main hobby store that people can walk into in the UK, and I look, it's got Humbrol, acrylic, and enamel, and it's got Tamiya, but it hasn't got Vallejo. So Vallejo tends to be a little bit more specialist, but it's in every sort of model shop that you went into, if you can find one, or any sort of military modelling shop. What you do find is the things like Citadel paints, which are in the gaming community, they're quite easy to find. So it's just what you fancy. Rev will do a set, which I think Hobbycraft have, and they're another model paint. I just came away. I tried Floquil and I bought a lot of them. I had Polyscale. They're always a pain to ship over to here. They have glass cases. And I don't think they're a patch on Vallejo. I'd rather do Vallejo. I like the fact that you can drip Vallejo, so you can get a small amount out. We're painting models. I don't need a huge big jar. Nope. And I found that the capsule gunks up really quickly, and so I haven't got into it perhaps for a few years. I was very glad to get out of Floquil and Polyscale to stuff that is easy to find and doesn't smell. Well, not the Polyscale. But horses for courses.
Yeah. Well, Kathy, I think it's been a great show. I appreciate you being here,
Oh, it's been great to be on.
talking with us. Definitely livened up a Saturday afternoon.
Well, it gave me an excuse to tidy my layout up. So if anyone saw in the background, you wouldn't see all the cans that are normally out on the side full of round foam.
Well, look who popped in, Mr. Curtis.
How you doing?
Pretty good. We're wanting to show up.
Yeah, I clicked on the Hangout and it brought me right into here for some reason.
Yeah. But
well, I'm going to jump back off. Say thanks to Kathy for coming on. And we'll talk to you guys later.
Hi, Curtis. Oh, no, I think Florida said different time zone. But anyway, I want to say thank you, Kathy. This has been very enjoyable.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we do greatly appreciate it. And hopefully we can do another show later on.
Yeah,
sometime down the road. Certainly enjoy your videos. And thank you for being our pilot show, too.
Yeah. Well, and if anyone has any suggestions for videos they'd like me to do, just drop me a line and I'm happy to think about doing anything.
Okay. Yeah, definitely be emailing you closer to February. So when you're going to be here in Atlanta, that's not too far from me, about a 45-minute drive south. So,
that'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be
At least I have a very good reason for coming to Atlanta then. Yeah. But
well, I normally come out for a couple of days beforehand because otherwise it ends up being a bit of a fly back.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're about 3-hour flight to get over to the U.S.?
7 hours.
7?
Yeah. About 6 going back, 7 coming out. But then that gets me to Newark. I've still got to get down to Atlanta. So normally if I leave home at 9:30 in the morning my time and there's a 6-hour, 5-hour, whatever the time difference is, 5 hour.
Yeah, 5 hours.
There's always a delay coming to Atlanta. I don't know why. So I normally get in about midnight, 1:30 in the morning.
Oh.
Your time because of the delay. So it's kind of coming up for bedtime. So for the time I should be getting up by the time I normally get in. And yet Atlanta is one of the closest destinations. It's just funny. I don't really get good flights. I think it's because it's normally the winter and Newark or Atlanta gets stuck.
Yeah.
And then, whatever.
I would have thought there'd be direct flights from England to Atlanta.
There are, but I'm on United for air miles, so I can eventually get a free trip to the States, which actually I can now. And so I always fly via Newark for the... and I'm flying from my local airport, Birmingham, because I'm literally 10 minutes down the road from Birmingham Airport, whereas it's 2.5 hours down to 1 hour and a half, 2.5, depending on traffic, down to Heathrow. And it's easy enough to do, but what I don't want to be doing when I've had an overnight flight is driving back home. So I tend to come into Birmingham where I can be in bed about 20 minutes later. I
don't blame you for that. Yeah. Andy, I guess if you'll throw the splash screen up, we'll give the people and we will have all your contacts in the description of the video here. Yeah, we'll get everything there for you.
Thanks a lot. It's been great, guys. Had fun.
Thank you very much. We've enjoyed it for sure. We ready to go, Andy? All righty. Okay. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. This was a YouTube All Builders community special. Our first guest was Kathy Millatt, and this was definitely a big joy having her here and enjoyed talking to her. We did so early because there is a 5-hour time difference between us here. So, and we don't want to keep Kathy up too late. Yeah. But well, I say thank you very much. I want to thank the people over in the chat for your questions and comments. And go to YouTubeallbuilders.com. There you can find out about the schedules for the Tuesday night presentation, the live show, and also sign up for notification when the EMAG comes out. JD and his crew are they produce a fine product there with the EMAG. We also have Big Bill and Barry on the live show. They do a great job there. And we got a good team for the Tuesday night presentations. Gino, Barry, and Mike again do their tech show. We also have Troy that comes in and hosts. I do a little hosting on Tuesday night also. And we do have some great shows. Bill the Track Planner, he's one of our regulars. He's going to be with us in 2017. We're really enjoying having him in the shows. Miles Hale is doing a regular too for us. This year he's been doing layout tours, which have been very interesting, and showing off the layouts kind of in his area and wherever he's traveling to. We've had some really nice layouts there that he's shown off, and we're looking forward to seeing what he brings us next year. Don't forget, I know I'm surprised my phone has not been ringing off the hook from Big Bill going, don't forget to tell him about tonight's show. You know, this is a doubleheader. I'll let you go first on my Saturday. But tonight at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern is the live show. That's Barry and Big Bill. And their guest tonight is going to be Bill the Track Planner. And it's going to be an interesting show, and that's all I got to say about that. I'm going to let them spring it on you, what the topic's going to be. But be sure and check it out. That's Big Bill and Barry tonight, 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern time. So you got a little time, run out and get something to eat. Come on back. Get back in the easy chair. Get ready for Big Bill. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate you viewing today. All our shows are archived on our YouTube channel. YouTube, what is it, Eddie? I just had a senior moment. YouTube Mile Railroaders on YouTube, right? Yeah. Yeah, YouTube Mile Builders. Yeah. YouTube Mile Builders, Andy's reminded me, he's a little voice up here in my head. I need one. But thank you very much. We appreciate the viewers. Please leave comments and let us know how the show went. We'd like to know so we can keep doing these shows if y'all like them and who you'd like to see on the shows. So with that said, y'all have a good weekend. Enjoy your Saturday evening and Sunday. Thank you again, Kathy, for being on the show.
Sorry, I put it on mute. Thanks a lot. That was great.
All right.